Will
Right.
do.
Have a good meeting, everybody.
Thank you, Seth.
Thank you, Seth.
Okay,
Got it.
great. Do we have everybody admitted? Okay,
Everybody is admitted, Mr. Snow. You're good to go.
thank you. Good evening and welcome to the June 26th meeting of Scituate Conservation Commission. Couple quick things I need to read. First off, this meeting is being held remotely as an alternate means of public access pursuant to Chapter 20 of the Acts of 2021, temporarily amending certain provisions of the open meeting law. You are hereby advised that this meeting and all communications during this meeting may be recorded by the town of Scituate in accordance with our open meeting law. Also, the town of Scituate's Massa's commitment to diversity, equity, and inclusion. The Scituate Conservation Commission is committed to providing an environment of respect during meetings. We ask that all members to interact in a polite manner, even when there's disagreement. We value the participation of our community and want all participants, including marginalized and minoritized communities, to feel welcome and respected. And we ask our committee members and all who participate to commit to these standards and to support and respect our community. We have an agenda this evening. Are there any additions, changes, omissions to the agenda?
No, Frank.
Anybody from the commission?
Nope.
Okay, I'd like a motion to accept the agenda.
I make a motion to accept the agenda as written.
That's Penny. I have a second.
Second from Jen.
Thank you, Jen. All in favor, Richard?
Yes.
Did you say Doug's not on yet?
Correct.
Andy,
Yes.
Brendan,
Yes.
and Frank, yes. Great, thank you. Okay, right out of the gate, we have 181 Edward Foster Road, and they've requested a continuance until September 11th. I assume we have a meeting on that night. Go ahead.
I was gonna make a motion for that continuance, but hasn't this been going on for a year or so? I mean, isn't it time we pull the plug maybe? I mean, they just keep continuing. Any
It's
thoughts?
been going on since November. And agreed, the next time they come back, I think we'll probably have them do a public re-notification.
All right, but it did stop before November. This NOI might be from November, but there was enforcement and stuff before. Okay, I'll make a motion to continue 181 Edward Foster to September 11th.
That's a motion from Penny. There was a second.
Second from Jen.
All in favor, Richard,
Yes.
Andy,
Yes.
Brendan,
Yes.
and Frank, yes, thank you. Okay. We have
Lawson Road.
129 Lawson Road. This is also, this is a continued hearing.
Yeah, from May.
Okay. We have somebody from Collins Engineering.
I don't see anybody, so that person should raise their hand.
Is Pete Lyons got his hand up?
Good evening, everyone. Can you hear me?
Yes.
We can hear you.
How are we tonight?
Great, how you doing?
Good, thank you. I am back with a continuance. This has been before the commission about a month ago. Do you want me to share my screen? It looks like you already have one up. Do we want to?
Yeah, we just use ours, Pete, so if you
Okay.
want to explain where we are.
Sure. For the record, I'm Peter Lyons with Collins Civil Engineering Group. We are representing the homeowner applicant. This project is a installation of a new septic system on a 3-bedroom home on Lawson Road. Also with this project, we are proposing a deck off the side of the house. And what else? I can only, there we go. I could only see half the screen you had up. Yeah, so this is a septic repair and some minor construction associated with the house. There's a deck under construction on the north side. And a small deck to the southern corner of the project. The previous meeting, we discussed those things. In the back of the property, we have a BVW line delineated. One of the requested revisions was to bump up the erosion control and the conservation markers from the existing tree line in the back, well up into the yard. This location was discussed and agreed upon by the commission to, prevent any additional encroachment towards the resource area. The current tree line is right along the wetlands. And what we're proposing to do is basically bump up the limit of work approximately 25-30 feet in the backyard. And this is going to be allowed to revegetate in the rear of the property. So we're basically only looking to accommodate the work limit required for the septic system. The septic itself, due to the soil conditions and high groundwater, it is going to be, I would say, substantially mounded. We have grading of approximately 4 to 5 feet on the southern end of the system. We've proposed a concrete retaining wall on the northern side to prevent any abutter encroachment with the grading and help minimize any potential surface water issues to the abutter. Also, we see a timber retaining wall between the proposed septic system and our house. That's going to help us out with the surface water issues. So basically what we've done is we did test holes all over the property. When we first got out here, we did some test holes in the front. We encountered unsuitable soil, ledge, and underground utilities existing in the front, which pushed us into the backyard, into jurisdiction. So that's why we ended up where we are with the septic. We're proposing an 8-inch straw wattle around the entire project, including the site access on the northern driveway. We show a dewatering pit location and detail on the plan. Some other details for the retaining wall. A couple of wetland notes. I know we've already went over this, so this is kind of a quick recap. I don't know if the commission has any other questions or concerns with this project. I would like to note that it has been approved by Board of Health. That was one of the things the commission was waiting to receive, was Board of Health approval. So that has gone through as presented tonight. So that's what we got, and I'll take any questions from the commission.
Great, thank you. Richard?
Right now, Frank, I don't have any questions.
Okay, actually, Amy, do you want to fill us in on where we're at with this? I apologize. I should have jumped there
Well,
first.
sure. I mean, it looks to me like we're probably, just about there at, ready to close. We did get Board of Health approval and give the revisions that you requested. I mean, I don't know if I love the boundary down by wetland flag 10, because it's right on the BVW line. Like, I'd rather see that one closer to the erosion control line, but other than that, I don't have anything else.
Thank you. Penny?
Yeah, I just have one question, and it's not even with the wetlands. You have a proposed deck, a tiny one, on if you're facing the street from the house, would be on the right-hand side. What's that deck under construction on the other side? On the left-hand side of the house, if you're facing the street from the house.
Yep, That's just a wooden deck. I have not been to the property recently, but when we were out here for the test pits.
Was it already there?
It was not there. It was under
Oh.
construction, in a sense of they had the sonotubes poured. I think there were 4 of them right along the northerly line as the footings. The deck
Okay.
was not in place, but I'm not sure if that portion of the project has, since been halted or if they're still going on with that.
All right, well, it's just part of the thing then. It's 2 new decks, the little one and the big one. Okay, thank you.
Jen?
I think my only comment would be that I would agree with Amy on
Come on,
that conservation marker.
move it in some.
Okay. Andy?
Yeah, one small detail I think in the last plan, there was a shed to be removed in the wetland, and I don't see reference of that in this plan.
Oh,
I
this,
don't-
oh,
I
no,
believe that shed has already been removed.
It's gone.
bye.
If it's gone, that's good. I just want to make sure that that was still in the plans. That's it for me.
Hey, we could put that in the orders. Thanks,
Yep.
Andy.
Yep.
Brendan?
Yeah, my only comment was the conservation marker, I like with Amy and Jen. That's it. I have no other questions.
Do we have anybody? I didn't miss anybody, right? Do we have anybody in the audience that wants to speak to this one?
Seeing none, Frank.
I heard you say that there was a dewatering pit. I'm just looking at the plan real quick or looking for that detail. I'm assuming you've encountered water, so you know you have to pump that.
Yeah, that's correct. At least for the tanks, we anticipate dewatering. The detail is shown. I don't know if you guys can see my mouse thing moving around. It's in the middle of the plan, right above the retaining wall detail. It's essentially 2 rows of hay bales excavated in the middle with filter fabric laid between and underneath the dewatering pit.
Okay, so you do have a discharge area for that while you're doing the work.
Yeah, I'm sure it's
So
probably on the plan somewhere, but yeah, usually we call out one of the test hole locations to be used as a dewatering pit.
Okay.
In this case, I would expect it to be, to like test pit 4 area.
Okay.
Obviously, we try to keep that away from the resource.
Yeah.
So that would probably be happening right at the end of the driveway.
Great. Okay, I don't happen to see it on this one, but as long as it's part of that plan, that's great. Okay. I don't have any other comments. We're gonna make a motion.
I make a motion to close.
We have a second. And can we just make sure that that dewatering piece and the shed are removed and that conservation marker, those notes are made it on the orders?
Yep, and I would just like to add, this site is staked out, but I plan on going out there and just modifying the approved erosion control line. So at that time, I can relocate the conservation post. So that will be picked up on the as-built plan and will show the final post locations per the commission's request. The southerly one will kick up, basically to the corner of the erosion control, if that's acceptable with the commission.
Amy, is that okay with you?
Yes.
Okay. All right. Okay, so can I get a motion?
I did.
You did?
I made a motion to close.
Okay, do you have a second?
Lawson.
Second from Jen.
All in favor, Richard,
Yes.
Andy,
Yes.
Brendan,
Yes.
and Frank, yes. Great. Oh, Doug, are you on now?
I am.
Oh,
I am.
awesome. Good evening. So are you in favor of this?
Yes, that was a revisit on
Right.
that
Yes.
one, wasn't it? Yeah. So
Okay.
yes, I am in favor.
Thank you. Good. All right, 439 Chief Justice Cushing Highway.
Thank you all. Have a good night.
Thanks very much. You too. Thank you.
Yep, bye.
It looks like we have a request from Morse Engineering to continue this until the
Oh.
July meeting.
Oh. Oh, yeah. Okay, so I'll make a motion to continue 439 Chief Justice Cushing to July 17th.
I'll second that.
Second from motion by Penny, second from Richard, all in favor. Doug,
Yes.
Jen,
Yes,
Andy,
Yes.
and Brendan.
Yes,
Frank, yes, thank you.
Central.
162 Central, this is continued from the 5th. And we have Atlantic Coast Engineering.
Yeah,
Good
Jed,
evening, Jed Hannon
Hey,
with
Jed.
Atlantic Coast Engineering. Can everybody hear me okay?
We got you.
Great. So yeah, for the record, Jed Hannon, registered engineer, with Atlantic Coast Engineering. This particular project was continued from roughly 2 months ago. We're waiting on structural drawings. I'll just provide a quick update. So this is in Hummerock, land subject coastal storm flowage, Barrier Beach. It's in the FEMA VE 15. It's an existing single-family home, and this is a proposed raise and reconstruct. The home's 70 years old and really needs to be, updated, or in this case, replaced. We did send the commission a copy of the structural drawings. There was one item that I know we had talked about last time we had this meeting, and that was the driveway. The existing driveway is impervious. It's existing concrete, but it's pretty broken up. And the owner basically said that if the commission would prefer, crushed stone or the seashells, something pervious, they're certainly amenable to it. And that's really it. I'd be happy to answer any questions you may have. Thank you.
Amy?
yeah, so the structural plans came in modified. I still don't think that they're in the shape that are gonna be acceptable to get a building permit, so I'm not really thrilled with that. Like, I don't know, you have to take a look at them and see that there's just like, they don't really seem like they're the final set, although they are stamped and the footings have been removed, so they do appear to be driven piles, so that's good. With no other sonnet tubes, because originally they had also proposed that too. Yeah, and I'm definitely favorable to putting a condition for seashells or crushed stone rather than the pavement, and I think you guys can probably close this.
Richard,
No, my big thing was the pervious driveway, and if that's solved, I didn't have any particular other questions.
okay. Doug,
No, I think I'm good. What's the flood elevation out there?
15.
That's a VE 15 zone at that particular address.
So you're 3 feet above it.
Yes, exactly. 18.0 is proposed.
Okay. Yeah, no, I'm good. Thanks. Well, wait a minute. That's the first floor elevation. What's the, there's a required
supposed-
buffer, like,
it's supposed
Is
to
it
be a
2
foot
feet?
above I think it's 1 foot. Structural members need to be at least 1 foot above what the
It's 2 feet above BFE,
For the VE,
Um,
correct. With the AE,
subject to
it's 1
order
foot.
conditions for V
Yes.
zone and coastal dune.
oh, you said it's A? It's a
No, this is VE. This one's VE.
VE, so 2
versus
feet
AE,
above.
which is 1 foot.
Yeah,
So you've got a foot, first floor elevation less the floor. construction, everything, you're good?
Yes.
You're like, you're right there. Okay, that's all.
Yep.
Thanks.
Although is that, Jed, is that correct? Because the structural engine, any structural member should include the beams that are on the piles. So I'm just wondering if that does give you enough.
Yeah, so it's the lowest member of any structural element. So basically top of pile or bottom of beam. So if it's a VE 15, you got to be at least 2 feet above that, right? And then there's the framing members and then the floor itself. So in this case, the proposed finished floor is 18, so we're well good enough.
Okay.
Right, so the top of piles has got to be at least 17.
Top of piles is 15.
Well, the lowest,
So it's
do
top
you
of
have,
piles, and then there's all the framing members underneath.
I mean, typically, I don't have the benefit of seeing the structural plan,
yeah, that's
But,
what I was looking. I think
um,
that's why I'm having these questions. That's all. 'Cause I'm
Yeah,
but
trying
Yeah,
to
I mean,
find those in
we're
my
3 feet
email.
above the VE 15. So the minimum is 2 feet above the lowest structural member. We're a foot above that.
So
that's, hold that one, Jen. That's great.
okay, so I see top of pile at 17.
Okay, sorry, yeah, it is 17.
Okay, that all makes sense now. All right, thanks.
Yeah.
Picture's worth 1,000 words. So that's
right.
perfect. Thank you.
Okay. Penny,
no, I'm all set. Thank you very much.
Jen,
All good.
Sorry. I
No.
don't mean to believe it, but this plan says the first floor elevation is 20.17.
We'll get that. I'll get that resolved with Paul, the structural engineer. He was in a rush trying to get this to us last week. I noticed there were a couple other minor issues, but we'll get this resolved before we submit it to the building department.
Hence my comment.
Yes.
Okay, now I understand your
Agree.
comment.
I noticed a
Amy.
few
All
issues
right.
too.
Yeah, I mean,
Okay.
I think our orders say, built, in compliance with the building, requirements and yada, yada, FEMA. So just, that's all. Just want to make sure you're covered. So I'm good. I'll stop talking now.
Stop talking
I'll stop talking.
where did I leave off?
with me, I think.
Jen,
Oh, no, Jen.
Yeah, I'm good.
okay. Andy,
I'm good.
Brendan,
I'm all set.
did we have anybody in the audience for this?
For 162 Central, I don't see anybody.
Okay.
Okay.
I'm good.
So I'll make a motion to close.
Please,
I made a motion to close.
it's Penny. Richard,
I'll second it.
or do I have a second? So Richard
I'll second
second.
it.
Doug,
Yes.
Jen,
Yes.
Andy,
Yes.
Brendan,
Yes.
and Frank, yes, with the caveats that we discussed. So thank you.
Great. Thank you. Have a good night.
Thank you too.
Yeah.
184 Clap Road. On June 26th at 6 p.m., the Scituate Conservation Commission will hold a wetlands hearing under Chapter 131, Section 40 of the Massachusetts General Laws and Section 30700 Town of Scituate Code of Bylaws regarding the application of Pandonian Venture Partners LLC for work related to after the fact constructing of an addition, retaining wall and clearing at the single family home dwelling location 164 Clap Road, Scituate. Abutters and other interested parties are invited to attend. information to access the meeting is available on the agenda posted on the town website. And just for disclosure, I am a butter sort of diagonally across the street. I don't mind participating in this, but if the applicant had an issue, they could certainly bring it up, or anybody else. Okay. Who do we have on for this? Morse Engineering?
Yes, this is Greg Morse. Good
Greg,
evening. Greg Morse, representing the property owner and applicant Pandian Venture Partners LLC. As was just read into the record, this is a notice of intent. It's also a stormwater permit for property at 184 Clap Road. The property itself is about 2 acres in size. It's entirely upland land area. This is at the corner of Bates Lane and Clap Road. There's an off-site BVW, which is the blue line at the top of the page that was delineated by Brad Holmes, a professional wetland scientist of environmental consulting and restoration. And then kind of off the top left side of the page, there is a certified vernal pool off-site, the buffers of which extend onto this property. This is a partial after the fact filing. I was before the commission about a year ago to permit a septic system at this property to service the existing home there. The septic is located in the bottom right corner of the screen right now. That was permitted through an RDA process. The septic system has been built at this point, but the applicant acquired the property and has undertaken other work here, including they've constructed a new foundation under the existing house. They raised the house and constructed a new foundation under it. And in doing so, they removed a small wing off the back of the house, and they constructed a new addition in its place. It's approximately a 12 by 14 foot addition on the back of the house. And then they did some additional clearing to facilitate a future barn. So this plan here depicts that work that has been done to date. It also depicts the future condition with that barn, which is the shaded box at the top left corner of the screen. All of the work, fortunately, is outside of the 100-foot buffer zone. It's outside the 125-foot buffer zone, which is a no disturb to the vernal pool. However, it is inside the 250-foot buffer for the vernal pool under the local bylaw. Associated with this project is the stormwater permit. The stormwater permit, we are taking the roof of the barn, we're taking the gravel driveway that accesses the barn, and we're taking the new lawn areas associated with it, and we're directing them into 2 grassed depressions. One's kind of central on the page here. The other one is at the bottom left of the page here. Those 2 grass depressions retain the 2, the 10, and the 100-year storm events and infiltrate stormwater. This was sent out for a peer review. Horsley and Witten performed the peer review on behalf of the commission, and they are satisfied with all of their comments at this point in time. I turn it over to you.
okay, thanks, Greg. Amy, do you want to start?
Okay, so. Well, number one, we're not thrilled to have it come in as an after the fact notice of intent without prior warning. Like that was a little bit, something, fees were doubled, so I mean, I guess that's one thing to be said. It's true that it was reviewed by Horsley Witten and that we went back and forth a few times and the plan was tweaked and it meets stormwater requirements under the bylaw. It does also appear that it's a little bit closer than we would like for the new barn to this, setback for the vernal pool. But I think that given that some of the work has already been done, they are gonna be improving conditions, because they did come to us to at least acknowledge that what they did was wrong, and trying to make it better by installing stormwater infiltration in accordance with our bylaw, so that's positive. I think we would probably want to ensure that the driveways stay gravel and don't go to pavement. And also, I think possible mitigation of some sort for these disturbances into your setbacks.
Okay. Who would like to start that? Doug?
Well,
You-
first, I'm going to say, I'm looking, this is a question for Amy. Well, and others who would know this, but I haven't had a lot of notices or NOIs coming in that are predominantly in a buffer zone to a vernal pool. And so I was looking at this, a 250-foot buffer zone, it's a pretty good sized buffer zone. What sort of things are we supposed to be looking at in there? That's, I think Greg said that the 125 is a no touch, no build zone. So it's got to stay outside of that. What between the 125 and 250 are we looking for anything more than what you would do like in a, a 100-foot BVW buffer zone or something?
Amy, do you want to?
Yeah, our bylaw and regulations would encourage that area to be not touched.
The whole 250?
Mm-hmm.
That's
So
just
I see that
town,
there's,
Doug. That's not state. State is 125.
Right.
okay,
So
so
you
the
have
town
that
is
difference.
250.
Yeah,
Right.
we are more stringent.
So the existing house already falls within that, in the yard and everything. So what we're looking at is that the increased area that contains the stormwater and depression, and then in the barn. So is this like a barn on slab?
Yes,
So there's not like a walkout,
no, it's on a concrete slab.
just on a slab. So it's just a good sized barn for use.
Big barn,
Yeah.
bigger than a house.
Is that dark heavy line, Greg, going around there? Is that a retaining wall?
Yes, it is. Yep,
All right, to limit any grading from going any
into the
further.
125, correct.
Right, okay, it looks like just a tiny corner of it's in the 100-foot.
Correct. It's all almost entirely outside the 100 with the small exception of just that corner of the retaining wall and some grading adjacent to that retaining wall is inside the 100 to the BVW. Otherwise, it's entirely outside the 100. And it goes right up to the 125-foot no disturb.
Okay. And that little, although it's completely outside of our jurisdiction, but there's a little grading detention area up front too. Is that all part of the stormwater
Yes, it is.
requirements?
Yes,
Alright.
it is.
So there's not a lot of grading. I mean, it's fairly, shallow slope going from one end to the other, pretty flat until you get to the back.
Correct. It drops off to the wetland in the back. The top is pretty flat.
Okay. And the barn's proposed, that's not part of the after the fact. The only after the fact part is that small addition, that 12 by 14. And
That's
again,
the only structure that's been built is the addition on the house. They have done some of the clearing associated with the barn, but the barn has not been constructed, no.
okay. And again, that's only within the 250, no other.
Correct. Typically, when we look at, vernal pool buffers and habitat, what we're looking at is we're trying to make sure that we're not impeding the ability of wildlife to traverse through an area. For example, if there was significant fencing proposed, we would want to make sure that the fencing was up above the ground surface to allow animals to go under it. I don't feel that we're proposing anything that really inhibits wildlife movement to or from that vernal pool, how this is laid out.
Okay. And the detention area looks like just a depression basically with a little bit of a spillway.
That's correct. Yeah, it's a grass depression with a small spillway on it.
And gutters around the barn to collect and then go into that.
Correct.
All right. That seems. All right. Oh, thanks. Thanks.
Okay.
I'm good for now. Thank you.
Right. Jen?
Sorry, didn't realize I was muted. Yeah, I think I'm okay for now.
Okay. Andy?
I'm good right now.
Brendan? If Brendan's tied up for a minute, Richard, you want to go?
I'm sorry, I was on mute.
Oh,
I'm sorry.
Oh.
Yeah, I'm gonna have no questions at this time.
I'm finding it's tough to snack and stay unmuted at the same time.
Frank,
Richard?
I'm okay, except there should be some makeup for the after the fact. They took down a big tree, a few other things. I think there has to be something done about that, but otherwise I'm okay.
Okay. Do we have anybody in the audience on this one?
what about me?
Oh, I'm sorry.
That's
Oh,
okay.
she's
You
really
won't
hurt.
like forgetting me.
I jumped over Penny.
That's
I'm
impossible.
very, Frank and I are both very familiar with this site and, no, I don't have any questions. And the small barn will be removed eventually, Greg?
No, the small barn actually.
Oh, they're
is
gonna
gonna
keep
stay
it?
as well.
Oh, well, that's wonderful because it is an antique, I do believe. So that's kind of neat. They're gonna keep that.
Yeah. that
Okay,
stays.
no, it's a big project they undertook and the wildlife, for everybody on board on the property line from there over, that's all conservation land, conservation. So, there's plenty of space for the wildlife to go romping through their yard and in the wild. Thank you.
Thanks, Penny. Do we have anybody in the audience?
Seeing none, Frank.
Okay. So Greg, with the stormwater piece that we've added, does that take in the whole lot? So the disturbance for the septic system and the work on the house, driveways, barn?
It does. It was for the entire lot.
Okay, great. And then the 125 for the vernal pool. I mean, that's what I remembered having to abide by with a project. Just I'm wondering if there's typically some mitigation if we're closer to that. And there's no way that they could kitty corner that barn and get it any further than that distance. I realize they can't meet the 250.
I think they were trying to keep the barn a little further back on the lot, so it's not up on the street. you know, there's another antique barn up closer toward the street. They're trying to put some distance between those.
No, I mean aesthetically from Bates
Reason.
Lane and folks going in there, keeping it tucked back aesthetically works out nicely. It's just from our standpoint. So just as a consideration, when they did the middle school here at Town Hall, they couldn't get the required distance from the vernal pool. Just with all the buildings that were already there and the addition and whatnot. So we did get some mitigation, some plantings, some enhancement. I'm kind of drawing a little bit of a blank as to what would be beneficial on this site. Do you know what's going to happen to the area sort of in back of the small barn? It's an area that's all cleared out.
Just
Greg.
Just going to be grassed area.
Okay.
Why don't you plant some blueberry bushes?
Well, there's a couple of, I'm assuming these are a couple of detention areas, Greg.
They are, yes.
So what if those were vegetated, Penny?
Yeah.
With something rather than just, I don't know what you've got planned for those, Greg, if there's a detail.
We hadn't proposed plantings in them. They were just grassed basins. But we could certainly plant the bottom surface area of both of those. That's not a problem. We could
Yeah.
come up
Right.
with
I
a
mean,
shrub planting.
I think sometimes, you know, that's what we did on the one going into the Appleton field, the Crosby property.
Yeah.
So instead of being something so sterile as just a basin, if those could be enhanced to be a little bit more of a some sort of habitat. Not the maybe did Brad delineate this one?
He did. He did.
So maybe we could get some
Yeah, we can certainly add plantings in those two locations. That's not a problem.
anybody else have thoughts on that?
It seems like a good idea.
Good idea.
Throw some
Yes.
bushes in.
I just think those could look nice if they were thought about a little bit. They could serve a couple of purposes.
Yeah. Okay.
Amy, are you good with that? Could we word that into the orders?
Yeah, I mean, I think
Or do you want to get a
I would-
plan?
a plan would be good, but I think we should just take a look to make sure that the basins aren't relying on them to be vegetation free in order to,
Oh, I see.
you know, effectively work. Greg, do you have
No.
anything to say about that? Were they supposed to be mowed?
So, I mean, we have them mowed just as, because they're grassed basins themselves. But
Yeah,
when we put plants in them, you know, we're not deducting the volume of the plants. So we could easily do plantings in the bottom and accommodate that without altering any of the calculations.
okay, that's good.
Yeah.
Yeah, that makes me feel better.
Plants
Yep.
will suck up the moisture. Good.
So whether you want that on a separate planting schematic, you know, if that can be incorporated into a condition, or you want us to come back, either one.
No.
I think we can make a condition.
Are you happy, Frank?
And the other conditions are gonna be relative to the stormwater permit, which are pretty standard for stormwater permits, you know, like there's the O&M plan and different statements that are made within that stormwater permit. But otherwise, the limit of work would stand in the buildings that are proposed.
Anybody else, Doug? Anybody want to chime in on?
All good.
Yeah, no, I think the plantings are a good idea.
Okay,
Make a
somebody want to
motion.
make a motion?
I make a motion to close.
That's Penny.
Second that from Jen.
Second from Jen. All in favor, Richard,
Yes,
Doug,
Yes,
Andy,
Yes.
Brendan,
Yes,
and Frank, yes. Great. Thank you, Greg.
Thank you.
131 Brook Street. I gotta read that.
I think it's.
On June
Well,
26th,
31, Brooke.
31 Brook, sorry.
That's all right.
On June 26th, 2023, 6 p.m., the Scituate Conservation Commission will hold a wetlands hearing under Chapter 131, Section 40 of the Massachusetts General Laws and Section 3070 Town of Scituate Code of Bylaws regarding the application of William Good for work related to constructing an addition, pool, driveway, landscaping work at a single-family dwelling location 31 Brook Street, Scituate. Abutters and other interested parties are invited to attend. Information to access the meetings available on the agenda posted on the town website.
Oh.
Okay,
Well, that's a big
and we have
difference.
somebody from ECR.
Brad
You do.
Holmes.
Hey, Brad.
Frank, thank you, members of the commission. Brad Holmes, from ECR, on behalf of William Good for his property at 31 Brook Street.
This,
You can see the site plan in front of you. The site contains a single-family home. There's a existing paved driveway to the west, or kind of on that left-hand side of the sheet. It's almost more of like a shared driveway to the to 35 Brook Street. The site has a house that was built in and around 1912. There's a small shed over on the eastern portion. And the rest of the property is basically a maintained yard, lawn, right down to the wetland line. You'll see the wetland flags mark the location of a bordering vegetative wetland, and that's associated with the Scituate Brook. So we have the brook delineated with the bank flags. With that comes a 100 and 200 foot riverfront. We have a bordering vegetative wetland with the 150 foot buffers. We have a FEMA flood zone land subject to coastal storm flowage that encompasses the majority of the site. You can see the AE 15 zone is up towards Brook Street. So what we're proposing are a number of home improvement projects. If you start at the lower left corner of the existing house, there's a small addition proposed in that corner, which would just kind of square the house off. There's a rest. You can see that back end is shaded. There's addition proposed over that, leading to a proposed deck with stairs, a proposed pool patio and pool. And then as you move towards Brook Street, there's a proposed addition. The existing covered porch at that front right corner of the covered porch is proposed to be enclosed. There's also a proposed pervious driveway so that there's better access off of Brook Street. With that comes a retaining wall. And if you were able to scroll to the next page, the kind of a color coding. So what we've done is breaking it down so that you can see the project where it pertains to work within the riverfront. So as far as the commission's concerned, we're outside the 50-foot buffer zone. We are within the 100-foot buffer zone. We are inland subject to coastal and flowage, but the most important performance standards for wetland is riverfront areas. We need to comply with the river regulations towards the brook. So this project is complies with the riverfront redevelopment standards. So what we need to do is figure out the existing amount of degraded area on the site and compare that against the proposed degraded area on the site. So a degraded area, as you remember, is anything that has a loss of topsoil. So the lawn and yard do not qualify, but the house and driveway and walkways do. So the area in red is new degraded riverfront area that's associated with the small addition, the larger addition, and then the new driveway. The area highlighted in blue, the deck and the pool, those are considered exempt minor activities within the buffer zone and riverfront. So that doesn't go towards the calculation of degraded versus non-degraded. And the area highlighted in green is an area of proposed mitigation. So for us to be able to comply with the riverfront regulations, we need to offset the amount of proposed degraded area at a 2-to-1 ratio with the naturalized area. So if you scroll to the next page, that shows the proposed mitigation plan. So what we'd be doing is turfing out the lawn in that region. It almost gets out to that 50-foot buffer zone, very close to it, and revegetating it with woody shrubs and a conservation seed mix, all native plant species that would be consistent with a buffer zone. So in order for this project to work, we need to provide mitigation at that 2-to-1 ratio. And by doing that, we're in compliance. So the there are a number of proposals there, and it can go through them one by one, but that's the overall theme of the project. Well, bring it back to you.
Thanks, Brad. Amy?
Yeah, I thought that was pretty well explained, and I mean, I don't have much to say other than it appears that this is something that you can condition. We would want to see the mitigation plantings done as early as possible in this project. But given what Brad has just said to us, I would say that something that you can accept. Yeah.
Okay. Let's see. So, Jen, you want to comment on this one?
Sure.
First?
I think it's great to right off the bat see the robust mitigation. So that's definitely appreciated. I don't think it makes a big difference, but just for my own clarity is, are you enclosing the entire front porch or just that gray area? I couldn't
Just
tell
that
if it was
gray.
like, okay,
Correct,
got it.
just that gray portion.
Okay. I think I'm good for now.
Andy?
I think you said this, Brad, but just to confirm, you said it's lawn really right up to the wetland line right now?
Yes, it is.
Okay.
There are some photos in the NOI, but it's a lawn right down to that brush line of the BBW.
Okay. Yeah, I mean, it's a lot of development, but if we have lawn right up to that wetland, it's nice to see that buffer kind of restored. So I think I'm good for now.
Okay, Brendan? Thank you.
Yeah, I have nothing additional to add to that. I'm good for now.
Thank you. Richard?
I'm good.
Doug?
I'm just kind of a detailed question about the mitigation. Well, first off, I also appreciate the fact that you got mitigation in there proposed right away. So thanks for doing that. The mitigation that you might have explained this and I missed it, but do you just plant in the existing area, or do you have to remove the grass and bring anything else in? Like, how does that work? I have a vested interest in that.
Sure. So in order to get an herbaceous layer, what we're looking for, which would be a native wildflower mix, we're gonna have to turf off, grub out the turf. You know, top dress it with just a little bit of clean loam. We're not bringing in much, but just to supplement. And then now we have our base for planting, and then we'll plant the shrubs. And then do a little bit of natural wood chips around each base of each shrub just to help protect the plant. But the rest of it is raked and seeded with the wildlife seed mix, which is that wildflower and grass mix from Ernst Conservation.
Nice. Okay. Well, it sounds good. So, yeah, the bees and the butterflies will thank you.
Huh.
I mean, thankfully it's a big yard, you know, right down to the end, so we have enough space to be able to do this, and it should be, with the mix of shrubs and wildflowers, it should look nice looking out from the, you know, your house out to the brook.
Yep.
Good.
Great, thanks. Richard,
No, you already asked me, actually, I'm
I'm
good.
sorry, Penny.
No, you did a good job, Brad.
Thanks, Penny.
You're welcome.
Do we have anybody in the audience for this one? Anybody that has any comments, want to raise their hand?
Seeing no hands, Frank.
Brett, just a couple of quick ones. So where it says degraded area. There's actually the two additions. There's one that's sort of off the porch that's shaded in gray, and then there's a proposed addition it's probably a garage, I'm assuming. Is that right?
Right, so what I did was the area in red would be the new degraded area as far as, you know, there's gonna be a full, you know, a foundation and an addition on that small lower left addition, and then a larger addition, obviously. But the covered porch and the closing of the, you know, the existing house and deck at the rear, there's already structure over that, so it's already degraded.
Okay,
So basically, we're taking out areas of where there's lawn and then putting structure over it, so, or driveway, so we have to account for that new increase.
okay. And the driveway, is it asphalt now?
The driveway on the west side is asphalt.
Oh, I see. There's already one driveway
Mhm.
Almost.
that looks like
almost
it's shared with another.
Right. So in order, if we were to take it out, it would, you know, it would be a problem, I think, about it.
Okay, so there's a shared driveway on the west side, and then this is a brand new driveway on the other side.
Correct, to be pervious.
So what's that made of? I'm not seeing that detail.
We didn't provide a detail. It would be gravel, clamshell, and if it was going to be anything more than that, then we'd have to, you know, get a spec to the commission as if it were to be a, you know, just paver kind of scenario, but we haven't gone to that level, so I would say gravel or clamshell.
Okay. Is that noted? I'm just looking, listing porch. Maybe it's in the notes. I didn't, be honest, didn't read through everything.
I just listed it as pervious, but if the commission wanted to put a special condition that if anything other than gravel or clamshell must come to the commission for review on paver type system, we'd be fine with that.
Okay. I think that should be a note that's in there, Amy.
Yep.
I think that's it for me. Okay,
I make a motion to close.
that's from Penny. Do I have a second?
I'll second it.
Doug? All in favor, Richard,
Yep.
Jen?
Yep.
Andy,
Yes.
Brendan,
Yes,
and Frank, yes. Okay, thank you, Brad.
Thank you.
Good night. All right, 196 Edward Foster Road. On June 6th, 2023 at 6 p.m. the Scituate Conservation Commission will hold a wetlands hearing under Chapter 131, Section 40 of the Massachusetts General Laws and Section 30700 Town of Scituate Code of Bylaws regarding the application of 196 Edward Foster Road LLC for work related to constructing a dock at location 196 Edward Foster Road, Scituate. Abutters and other interested parties are invited to attend. Information to access this meeting will be available on the agenda posted on the town website. And for this, we have Grady.
Scott Benara.
Okay,
But Frank, we have a hand up already, so let's just see what it is very quickly. Maybe, I'm not sure what it could be.
well,
but-
I think from my understanding on this, a lot of folks have an interest in this project. I've received several calls and emails. I know that there's concern for this, and I've explained to most folks that the process is that, you know, we open the hearing and then we ask the engineer applicant to present the project. After the applicant presents the project, then the commission members will have questions. Then there'll be participation from the audience,
Yes.
questions and things like that. And
Right, and the participation from the audience is questions targeted to this project.
well,
only.
that's, yep.
Yeah.
So I'm about to say that there's a
In a
couple of
minute.
things that is the project before us is this dock and walkway along at the end of 196 Edward Foster Road. So that's what's on the agenda for tonight, and that's what we'd be discussing. The other part of it is what we have encouraged in the past. We still have more hearings and another kind of maybe time-consuming issue later on in the evening. So we would appreciate that comments be direct, be brief, and not repeated. If someone's already asked the question and it's been answered, we don't really want to repeat all that. So that's the process. And like the applicant to go ahead and get started.
Okay, thank you, Frank. For the record, Scott Fanaro with Grady Consulting, here on behalf of the applicant, Joe Harold. Also with us tonight is Matthew Mitchell of Orenberger Associates. He may want to say a few things after I give my spiel. So what we are proposing here is a notice of intent for a private dock. The dock is 144 feet long with a 20-foot long landward ramp, a 30-foot long seaward ramp, and a 10 by 20 float, again, for private use. As Frank mentioned, this dock is subject to the Chapter 91 license. As such, there are some regulations that we're required to adhere to. One of those being that we must maintain a 25-foot setback to abutting lot lines. We're proposing a minimum of 26.2. There's also a requirement to allow public access either over the dock or under the dock. So the requirement is a minimum of 5 feet from the mean high water line to the bottom of the dock, and we are providing that. We're also providing or proposing 3/4 inch spacing between the decking to allow for light penetration. This project has been reviewed by the harbor master. I'll just read a few of his comments here. He said that he does not see any hazard to navigation. There are a few things that he's asking for, essentially putting the applicant's address on some of the pieces of the dock here. He's also asked that the dock and gangway be removed from November 1st each year and
Yeah.
reinstalled in May 1st of each year, which is something the applicant is aware of and willing to do. Earlier today, we also received some comments from DMF. Some of their comments were about shading, they want to allow light penetration. So to that extent, like I said earlier, we are providing 3/4 inch spacing between the planks to allow for light to penetrate through that habitat. They also had a comment about public access. So I'll just reiterate that we are meeting that standard through Chapter 91. They asked us to look at the float size for this project here. This really is the smallest float size that we can propose that will meet the needs that the applicant has here with his current boat. And if Matthew is on here, if you'd like to add anything, go ahead.
Not seeing Matthew.
We had one hand up that said Gwen. Any chance he's on a different computer?
Well, there's a hand.
His
Yeah.
hand's up. He's
Oh,
in
we
front
got
of us.
Matt. He's in the top corner there.
Yeah.
Is he in? Oh, we have a little difficulty.
So,
I'm not seeing where Matt is.
He showed up in the top corner, but then we lost him.
Yeah, so I say we start going through the members.
Jen, are you
Have
just
Have we
looking at
heard
Jen?
from-
Just looking at Jen Smith.
oh, okay.
Sorry. All right, well, if he pipes in, let's see.
Do you want to start with me?
Sure, that's a great idea.
Okay.
Thank you.
All right, so, you know, this is a dock, like Scott just explained. Anyways, it's mostly agency review that's gonna license this structure under the Chapter 91 requirements, and different state agencies. We did get comments, like he said, from DMF today. And my interpretation of those comments were that the overall size of the dock was too big and that they wanted to see a revision in size, in accordance with the BMPs for small docks. And so one of the things that I was looking at, which I think really the direction will be coming from the state, not us, but that what they're looking for is a dock no wider than 4 foot wide, and also possibly north-south orientation, no further than 10 degrees off that north-south, and then also the float size. But the float size, it seems like that is actually fairly consistent with other floats that we've been permitting. And the height they seemed pretty good with. And other than that, Harbor Master was good. DEP just noted that it was subject to all these state licenses, and I do think it's something that you can condition after you get revised plans.
Jen Smith, can you see if you can admit Gwen? I think that is Matt Mitchell. If that hand is up.
Am I in?
You are
are.
now. Thank you.
I thank you for allowing me in. I'm on my wife's computer because my laptop, of course, wouldn't work when I was trying to get on for this hearing. I don't really have a lot to add for what Scott said. My purpose here was to introduce Joe Harold and say I was on behalf of the LLC here. and let Scott run with it, which I believe he did. And it seems to me from DMF and the harbor master, things are positive, as Amy said. And, you know, we'd just like to keep this review narrow tonight. I understand there's a lot of concerns about this project, but in terms of what the jurisdiction is of the commission, I would hope that this would be kept within that. And that's it.
Okay, thank you, Matt.
Thank you.
As Amy, just I didn't get a chance to read that from them, but yours kind of initial interpretation is that perhaps the dock is kind of aggressive.
A little large, yep.
Okay,
And that, I think, you know, the comments came in this afternoon, so maybe you haven't even had a chance to read them, actually. So they are really hot off the press, but, you know, in my experience on these types of comment letters is the project proponent would generally respond with some kind of a, you know, like consideration of what their comments are, because that's what the direction that the project is headed.
okay. All right, great, thank you. I'd like to, Doug, do you want to start with this, since maybe there's some survey
Sure.
questions or things like that?
I was looking for the north arrow. That was the only part. But I will say, well, I know that I know this has a process to go through, and that there's going to be a lot of professional and state agencies weighing in on this, and that's expected. I did have a takeaway similar to Amy's, that I thought the letter that they said kind of indicated that they were not particularly satisfied with it yet. So I would think it would have to be responded to in some way. They talk about the impact on shellfish, and they did talk about the size of the float. Yeah, and but I think I would imagine those can all be addressed. I think they just need to be. And but we permit docks like this all the time, so people can do these if they meet all the regulations. So I feel that they probably will be. I don't know if this is something, you know, we can. It seems like we can't close it tonight. But I could be incorrect about that, but it just seems, unless what we do is we close it and we just punt it to the other agencies. But as far as the plan and the details on it, like, I don't really have any questions or concerns. It looks pretty straightforward.
Okay, thank you. Richard?
What Doug said and what Amy said about the DMF comments, I echo. There certainly seemed to be some concern also about some of the comments about timing for fish and fish eggs and things like that. So other than that, I don't have any concerns, but that certainly has to be answered.
Okay. Penny?
Yeah, well, I think most of the questions have to be answered to the state, that, and there's no way they're gonna let them go forward. I was pleasantly surprised that there's horseshoe crabs there. I didn't think we had any in the area anymore. So you're gonna have to be careful of those horseshoe crabs, or I'll be upset. And I have one issue. I did read what they sent out. Is it the width or the length of the dock they think is too big?
They just mentioned the overall size.
Well, I'm assuming this is a good sized boat he wants to park.
I believe so, yes.
Yeah, well, once again, I think that's something that's gonna be ironed out with the state. How large they're going to let you, and I certainly hope, and I do think Mr. Harold will be very much in compliance with what they say, and to take into consideration the sea creatures that need to be protected there. So I basically don't have anything to say because I think it's beyond my scope. That's for darn sure. And as long as you do everything the state says, that's great. Thank you, Frank.
I mean, they had nothing to say. It took a few minutes.
I know that.
Jen? Maybe I want to jump to Andy and then back to Jen. Andy, do you want to comment?
Nothing too new that hasn't already been said. Somebody mentioned we do permit these docks, but this is maybe the first one in the harbor that I've seen in a long time, or maybe at all since I've been on the commission. So I noted that, I mean, this is a much more sensitive area than a lot of the river area that we permit, right? There were very specific animal life that was mentioned. And the letter did say, you know, that there are best practices that can minimize, but not eliminate harm to those animals. So yeah, and I know the state will review it. I mean, it looks like it's a 10 by 20 float, so it looks like they want a reduction there, which would be good. But I guess, yeah, I guess we'll see what comes back, but definitely want to watch this one closely because it is a pretty sensitive area.
Okay, thank you. Jen, are you back on?
I would just echo Andy's sentiment that kind of like watching closely, but looking forward to kind of the next series of permitting to see what they have to say.
Okay, thank you. Brendan?
Yeah, I'm with the same thought process of like Andy and Jen and everyone else actually. So I have nothing additional.
Okay, thank you. Have I asked all our members?
Yes.
Typically, we would switch over to anyone in the audience. I'd like to make a few more first. I've had a little bit of time and I've certainly taken a fair number of calls from a number of folks in the community on this, and I've got some questions for the engineer and maybe the attorney, and I'd like to do those first, that maybe that would help us move through this initial process. First off, we know that this does get scrutiny, Chapter 91 and other agencies from the state, but it is in the town of Scituate. It's our harbor, and folks are genuinely concerned for that. So I think the commission doesn't just look at this and say, yep, it's on to the next one. We do look at these, and we've had a number of docks, and we have a fair amount of experience. As I think it was Andy pointed out, there are a lot of docks in the harbor, and we have conditioned, more of them have been upgrades, either a town pier or a private club or whatever in the past few years, but we've had a number of them. And so we do want to look at all those things. Maybe for Grady, for Scott, or if there's someone else. So this pier is just right behind the jetty. Is there consideration for additional ocean velocity or anything on this in terms of withstanding storms? This is pretty exposed location. Did a structural engineer review this?
That's a great question, Frank. This is in a unique location where the jetty actually kind of protects this area from a lot of that storm.
Right.
And also the applicant will definitely be taking the suggestion of the harbor master and removing that dock and gangway during, those certain times of year where there's some heavier storms.
I'm looking at this one cross section, which leaves me, I maybe there's a little bit more. I'm just looking at the application. So like, do we have sizes of piles and things like that, diameter, depth that they're driven to, that sort of information?
Yep, yeah, so they're 8-inch diameter timber pilings. The depth of those, I would have to rely on Paul Armstrong, who will likely be installing this here. But he installed one similar, not too far away from here, very similar location and type of dock. So he's pretty familiar with this.
Okay. Well, I think that's a fairly critical piece on this, but we know that in the river, inside the harbor, they can get lodged with ice. They certainly can take a beating. There's a small cross section that's kind of blanked out with our faces, but it shows some cross bracing and a little bit of framing, but that's the structural part is a concern with that exposure. Am I right in saying that the dock or the walkway has to be on the applicant's property?
That the ramp?
And the walkway. I'm just wondering where the property lines are, Scott.
Okay, sure. So yeah, looking at
It's a little bit, when I look at this, it's kind of hard. There's a lot of arrows and there's actually you've got sort of a picture with some arrows pointing to some things, but just wondering where the actual property line ends on this. And is the dock, we had this discussion on a dock. I think you guys might have actually done it on Border Street. And was all the dock on the property owner's actual property?
Okay. So the property ownership here, it actually just extends until land under the ocean, the mean annual low water mark. So all of the ramp and the dock itself are within his property.
Okay.
The property does stop where that dashed line that says mean annual low water mark. What the dashed line to the left, kind of running up and down the sheet, that's just an extension of the. Yep. So that's an extension of the nearest abutters line at 185, just to show compliance with the 25-foot setback.
Okay. So the distance is like 382 or whatnot. That's to the channel. From the dock to the channel. That's in the it's in the one that has a picture as opposed to a plan. There's more like a GIS thing that shows some other information.
Yep. Yeah, that's just to show that we're not interfering with the navigation channel.
Okay. So another one is access to the jetty and seawall.
Can I follow up on that?
Sure.
Right, just like I'm
Yeah.
just.
Well,
for
that's your
clarification.
field.
Well, no. Well, it's just if their land goes to mean low water, that you show that to approximately -5 feet. So that shows the dock and float past that mark.
That's correct.
So it's not on their property.
Well, that portion of the work is subject to review under the Chapter 91 license.
Okay, but I thought Frank was asking if the dock had to be on their actual property, their ownership, the fee ownership. So is the answer to that no, it doesn't, that the float can be out in public waterway?
So, yeah, so.
Am I overthinking your question, Frank, or did you? That's what I thought I heard you ask.
So when we were looking at the ones on I'm doing this as it pertains to the docks that we just looked at recently on Border Street and where the actual walkways are placed. And as they went across the marsh, those properties sort of angled. And so the walkway had to be angled. But I'm assuming once it got to the water, that was no longer owned. That was not property that was owned by the applicant. So the walkway had to stay within that. And then once it got to open water, they had to extend it to a point where they could be able to use it. As long as it didn't interfere with a navigable water. And I guess that's why this flips to chapter 91 at some point. So, we typically condition projects. We can condition projects that are on a certain piece of property. We can't condition a project that's on someone else's property.
Right, correct. So I mean, with the float and everything, that's normal, but that would
Mhm.
be out beyond the limit of the ownership.
Well,
Mhm.
but yes and no, because we did get into this in the Inner Harbor where it was TK O'Malley's that we conditioned a dock. And they wound up putting it on property that was part of back then it was the quarter deck, Lucky Finn, where that was. And then that had to get relocated because it turned out that they had actually located the dock on Lucky Finn's or the Bowman's property.
Okay, but this is located out in public waterway.
Yeah. So I'm assuming that's where that flips to chapter 91, but it would be important to know that.
Okay, all right. Sorry to interrupt. I was
No,
just.
no, no.
Well-
I think these are
Frank,
points
it
that,
flips to chapter 91 as soon as you go over a wall or cross into any of the high water, low water mark.
okay, well, that's my point. It's just so that folks understand where it leaves our jurisdiction and where it goes from there.
Okay.
Okay.
Alright.
So access to the jetty and the seawall for maintenance. Are there any easements or any any other pieces on this property that allow for access and maintenance to the jetty? Has the owner addressed that, or maybe there's something else on the plan that allows in the past when the jetty has been worked on? I know they've brought some things by ocean with a barge or whatever, but they've also gone to the end of Edward Foster
Yeah.
and then been able to move machinery towards the jetty. In this case now with this pier like this, that seems a little bit more challenging. I think they could get between the house and that. And in most cases, folks they're happy to have them come fix that because obviously they don't want their property to be, as you pointed out, this is protected by the jetty. But has any consideration been given to that so that how that could be done going forward?
Sure. Yep. So there are no easements or access rights across the property to maintain that jetty. When we spoke with DPW last, I think it was actually on the lot next door, 13 Circuit Ave. DPW mentioned there was some proposed work coming up to shore up that jetty, and they mentioned that all the work will be done from the seaside. So going forward, they can easily have access from seaside to maintain this jetty.
Okay. And then you mentioned that this might be Paul Armstrong, South Shore Pile Driving. Do we get like a means and methods with this where we're concerned about aquatic life? Obviously, there's times of the year. I don't know whether at some point, maybe depending on what they hit for material, they might have to do some jetting or something along those lines. Do we get into that, Amy? Do we want to have some sort of additional information?
Well, so our standard dock orders have called for BMPs, which are consistent with state guidance.
Okay, because I would assume that some of this is going to be done by land and then some's going to be done by barge.
Yes.
Okay. So we can put those into our orders.
They're in the
Those-
order, yeah.
Okay. All right. I think those for right now. Anybody else in the commission want to add anything before we could certainly jump in at any point? We're going to open this up to to interested parties. Anybody else? No, anybody have their hand up for questions? So when you're called on, if you could state your name and address, please.
And keep it.
And then
brief
we
and
want to
the
keep it
topic.
to the point. And
Yep.
hopefully, if we've already covered the subject, we don't need to repeat it.
Right, so I'm gonna unmute Lisa first, because she's on top of the list.
Okay,
Hopefully she's on. Lisa?
hello.
Oh,
How's that? How's that?
you're
We
on.
got you.
Great, good. Hi, Lisa Halbauer Fenton, 25 Crescent here in Scituate for coming on 30 years this year. And I just want to say hello to you all. And I want to particularly say to all you West Enders that you're about to hear from the people who live here on the harbor side. And it's an incredibly tumultuous place. Little bit different than the West End Forest. You guys get big winters and winds, but what we're looking at here, and I can attest to the last 30 years when we used to have, these big storms that would just create such havoc, maybe 2 or 3 times a winter. We're having them pretty much every month, at least once in the winter, and into the fall and spring, and sometimes summer as well. So we've got these huge overflows. I heard somebody say that the jetty protects this area. During a high tide storm, some of these breakwaters clear right over the top of that breakwater by many, many feet. And I'm speaking for a group of surfers who, when the waves get too big out in the big ocean during the winter, everybody comes here into the harbor. And there's this wonderful little clan that surfs right off of the dock there at Stellwagen. And what you do is you stand there and you look at the breakwater and you see it flowing right over the breakwater, and then you can see underneath the Stellwagen dock these big waves that are coming, hitting the dock underneath, and then you catch the wave and then you go in. The point is that there is such a robust, powerful circulating current right in that spot that, number one, the jetty doesn't protect it, but number two, and I don't know how the existing Chapter 1 requirements work on this, but there's an incredible amount of erosion that takes place. And you can see in that picture that you've got on the screen right now, you see that beautiful line of waves on the Atlantic Ocean side. And then you see how it takes an angular turn and it starts to come inland. And then it just pretty much creates this beautiful 3/4 turn all the way around and smashes right back into that beach. And to be able to, to be putting another structure there that's going to be that massive, and with that many pilings going into the ocean, coming out that far in that, it's basically like the Bermuda Triangle right there, the perfect storm of currents and circulating current and flow, that impact is going to do huge things right there at that point. And so I'm just basically what I'm saying is that I don't think that looking at this thing statically gives you the necessary information to know what's going to be going on with regard to erosion. We know the kind of money we've been spending on seawalls and the different repairs that we've got going on jetties. So, this is certainly to be considered. I would also like to make the point that you cannot repair that jetty from only the ocean side. You guys have seen the size of those boulders that it takes to create a breakwater. So there's definitely going to have to, and I'm sure the Army Corps engineers who are responsible for, managing the repairs on these jetties will come back to you with their thoughts about how much clearance they need on the other side of that wall. But these are all things that I really hope people are considering. And I wouldn't be so concerned or alert, but I just feel like the new owners of this property are new to this area. They have no idea the extent that some of these storms are building up to, especially recently. Over the last 30 years, the order of magnitude of these storms has gone nuts. And so to think that you could just kind of build this dock out here and have it be nothing more than, yeah, well, we've built docks like this before, that is just not going to be good enough. It's just way too, at this point, unpredictable, and to not give it that due diligence, I think would be a real shame. And this is not just about the wildlife underneath, but it's also about just overall erosion of that area and what it's going to do long term to the harbor. And with that, I will end. But thanks for your time.
Thank you, Lisa. I appreciate everybody's passion for this, and I know that there's a lot of feelings that I would appreciate it if maybe a little bit more direct for your concerns would be helpful. We do have a few other hearings to go forward after this, and but I think to summarize what you had to say, even though I live in the woods, been doing this for quite a while, but I think the top concern that I had when I brought this up was the structural element, and thinking about how we can satisfy some of that, along with the erosion or the shifting that happens around that. And that could be something at some point. There may be some dredging or something that would need to be done to be able to continue to maintain a boat there. So maybe that's something we can put in our notes to chapter 91. Thank you.
All right, Frank, I'm gonna
Yep.
put Jenkins on.
Yep. And again, I'd like to just try to keep it to the questions or the concern. It would be helpful. Thank you. Jenkins.
Finally, sorry about that. I'm not an expert at these things. So this is Lyle Jenkins, 22 Sunset Road. I've lived here 38 years, and I'm going to skip all the things that have already been talked, and I just want to address the idea of navigable waters. I mean, I've been kayaking, windsurfing. My kids have been kayaking, windsurfing, sailing small sailboats. You know, every bit of this harbor that isn't covered in moorings and boats going in and out at high tide gets used. And if you're out kayaking, the first place you go before you cross the channel is you hide behind that jetty to cross over to the other side of the harbor and get out of the way of all the traffic. And that starts at sunrise and goes all day. That jetty, it's a prime place to fish by kayaks, by little fishing boats. There's not a lot of water there. It's only like 2 feet deep at low tide. So, you do all your fishing at high tide. So I just want to address it. I don't agree that that's not navigable waters. It's used. This dock's sticking out. And in terms of storms, I've watched the Coast Guard dock around the corner from this place get destroyed twice and get repaired, including wave breaks ripped off and put back on. And as mentioned earlier, they surf behind it. These waves are huge all year long, and mostly obviously in the winter during the big storms. Okay, that's all I have to say.
Thank you.
Frank, I'm
Thank
gonna
you.
put on Anne Marie Bowden.
Yes,
Okay.
hi everyone. I'm actually the one most impacted by this.
Can you just give us your full name and address, please?
Yes, sorry, Anne Marie Bowden, 185 Edward Foster.
Good evening.
Good evening. I just want to say that if it is approved and it is reasonable, I am not going to fight it. I disagree with a number of things people have been saying, and I live here. I see the stuff coming over the spray over. I live here. I get it. But I don't appreciate people that don't even live right next door saying that they have a say in something. I mean, I get it, but I want to hear all the facts as far as, is it something that the Army Corps of Engineers would approve? Is it reasonable? Is it not gonna? I'm a wildlife person. I love it. I just want to hear all the facts before people dig in. That's all.
We will.
Thank you.
Thanks.
We have somebody on an iPhone.
Hi.
iPhone is on. Yeah.
This is
name?
Heather Jenkins. You just spoke to my father. So I have some concerns about, so you mentioned that you have docks in, the inner harbor and on the marsh. Those are low velocity zones. So when you put timber pilings in them, they're not going to have that effect that you would put timber pilings next to a high velocity zone. Like the coast, all along the coast of the Northeast, there are remnants of these dilapidated ones that they have put next to jetties that not only have eroded the land underneath, but like they are not sustainable. They get destroyed within a couple years. The reason why there's no docks in the outer harbor is because of the wave action there. It's all high velocity. The two docks that were put there in like the 1800s only lasted 2 years and then got destroyed and never rebuilt. So it's kind of, there's a reason why there hasn't been any docks in this area. So I would like to see more research done to the effects, literature and stuff on high velocity timber pilings, because all the ones that are in other states are either getting removed or not rebuilt because of the issues that they have.
Okay, I'm sorry, was it Heather? First name?
Gone.
Jenkins.
Okay, thank you. Do we have anybody else in the audience?
Seeing none right now.
So Amy, we have,
Oh, hold on. There's somebody.
yeah,
Derek. I'm gonna unmute Derek.
Yeah, hi, can you hear me?
we got you.
So my wife and I live on 13th Circuit Ave next to this project. And the issues that we had were, I know that we don't want to talk about the other project, but like that other project was approved. And on that other project, there's 3,000 square feet of runoff off of that project onto our property. And I didn't even think you were allowed to do that. So it didn't really seem like anybody is looking out for my wife and I on the other side of the project. So it's kind of hard for us to trust that anybody's looking out for us on this project as well. We were just surprised that that amount of runoff was allowed, especially where they put in a couple of catch basins to take all their water away. And, they're draining right onto our driveway, which is grass. It just surprised me. And so we didn't look at any of the meetings, but now I feel like we have to, because, I thought that it was the conservation's job to see where water runoff went, not mine. But that's pretty much where we have that section. So we were just really untrustworthy as to the engineering of this project, because the last one did not do us any favors. That's it.
Well, we're trying to stick to this project, Derek, and I really don't, I'd love to debate some of the things that you just mentioned, but I don't think that that's in the purview for this evening. So I think we'll just try to stick to the project that we have at hand. Anybody else?
Seeing none, Frank.
So Amy, do we want to review this for?
Well, I would think that, as I said before, that the engineer and applicant will come back with some kind of response to DMF's comments and probably revised drawings. So I would propose that we keep it open and continue it till that's worked out. So, Scott?
I think if we're going to continue it, I'd like to get a little bit more input structurally on the storm thing. To me, that was one of the bigger pieces here. Is that this, someone feels pretty confident that they can attest that this is dealing with a velocity area or the bracing or whatever. To me, I'd like to get something additional for structure and maybe a means and methods kind of thing. And just the access to the jetty, that we can confirm that with DPW as to either future access needs or whatever. I think those few things ought to be addressed if we're going to continue this.
So how far out do you want to go?
If I could maybe just address a few of those comments.
Sure.
So Amy, you're 100% correct. We typically would respond to DMF comments and address those prior to the hearing. But we did just receive those today. We would kindly request a conditional approval, conditional that we're able to satisfy DMF's comments. And Frank, to your point about the concern about the structural stability of the pilings here, I would just like to note that everything, under the high water mark is subject to the Chapter 91 license review. So I don't believe that would really fall under this this review process here. So we would like a decision, whether it be conditional or not tonight, if possible.
Okay. I see another hand up. I know this has been a little bit hard to make contact. If this is another person, I don't know if we want to entertain that before
Yeah.
we close this.
I just unmuted the iPhone.
Hi, this is Karen Holdsworth. I live at 11 Sunset Road. And I
evening.
just want to, thank you. I just want to make sure that we don't approve this conditionally until we get the required evidence, make sure that we look at all the studies for velocity and look at how it's going into the public space. The neighbor abutting mentioned she's the only one impacted, but I don't think that's really the case. So I think we really need to look at this from a holistic perspective and then make a decision.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Okay. Well, I think it's significant enough to continue it. And I would like to get a little bit more information either on that structure or what Chapter 91 will do with that. So I don't know. Do we want to go till July? Anybody,
No, that meeting's full. So there's a meeting just right after that in the beginning of August.
August what, Amy?
7th.
August 7th.
Thank you.
Amy, can this move forward so that this can start to be reviewed under Chapter 91 before we do this? So we can start to get some feedback from.
Well, one of the things that I was going to do was reach out to DEP, to Wetlands and Waterways, and see if they have preliminary comments on this that they can provide too, in addition to the DMF, if they could possibly give it a quick scan. But
I think that would be helpful for folks that have concerns as to where the next piece of this is going. So if you could do that, it would be helpful.
I'm not sure whether or not they offered to do that, like a pre-app consultation. I'm not sure if the applicant's engineer sat down with partners at the state to take a look at it first either. But anyways, I don't think that all of those state avenues are fully vetted at this point, so. That's why I don't think you should close, but
Okay.
To answer your question, Frank, we cannot continue on without an order of conditions.
Okay, I think Mr. Mitchell, Attorney Mitchell wants to jump back into this.
all right, he's on.
Hi, I just want to again kind of reiterate, I mean, we do have a Chapter 91 review process to go through, which is going to address, I think, the issues that are being raised right now, which I believe, as Amy said, if best management practices are used, which are your standard conditions for a project like this, then, you know, I agree with Scott that, you know, I don't think that there's really anything else for the commission to consider at this point in time, given the fact that we're going to be going before the state under the Chapter 91 review, which is really where kind of the rubber hits the road with this thing. So I would just reiterate, as Scott just did, that, you know, we feel the hearing should be closed and an order issued.
Thank you. Well, I'll take a motion from somebody. I know that in the past, we've sort of brought these things, we've gotten all the information we need. And then we've moved it along, knowing that Chapter 91 will be the next review. If commission members feel like we've got enough information, if you want to give a motion to close, that's fine. If commission members want additional information, then I take a motion for a continuance. So
I think we've raised enough questions that are still out there that I'll make a motion to continue to August 7th.
I have a motion from
I'll
Andy,
second it.
second from Richard. All in favor, Doug,
Yes.
Penny,
Yeah,
Jen, skip Jen
Oh, I'm
first.
sorry, Jen had to drop.
Oh,
Sorry.
okay, Brendan
Yes.
and Frank, yes. Okay, thank you.
Thank you.
and, 29th Surfside.
Got to open that one, I guess.
Yeah.
On June 26, 2023 at 6 p.m., the Scituate Conservation Commission will hold a wetlands hearing under Chapter 131, Section 40 of the Massachusetts General Laws and Section 30700 Town of Scituate Code of Bylaws regarding the application of Philip and Carla Coleman for work related to constructing an addition at a single-family dwelling at location 29 Surfside Road, Scituate. Abutters and other interested parties are invited to attend. Information to access the meeting will be available on the agenda posted on the town website. And we have Morse Engineering.
Yeah, Greg Moore.
It's pretty straightforward.
Greg, or somebody from Morse.
Thank you. This is Greg. Just was unmuting there. So this is a new notice of intent for a project at 29 Surfside Road. I'm representing the property owners, Philip and Charlotte Coleman. We revised this plan very significantly today. I realize it came in today, but we've removed the garage addition from this project, where it is now proposed just as a deck across the front of the house. This property is approximately 11,700 square feet. It's located at 29 Surfside Road. It's developed with an existing home. The existing home was constructed on piles. This portion of Surfside Road is identified as a barrier beach. As such, with the barrier beach, we're limited on a garage addition like this. It would have to be constructed on piles, and that's not what we desired to do. So that's why we've eliminated the garage addition. The deck, however, extends across the entire front of the house. It's in land subject to coastal storm flowage, elevation AE 16 and AE 12, where the work is proposed. We also have the site classified as coastal beach and coastal dune, being that it's on a barrier beach. It is an entirely developed lot. There is no barren soil on this lot. Is maintained as driveway surface, the existing house and lawn right up to the edge of the seawall. This portion of the barrier beach is not receding in any way. It doesn't provide sediment source or any nesting habitat for birds. The proposal with the new deck, it would be constructed on open sonotubes without footings. That is permittable per the wetlands protection regulations in the guidance we've received from the DEP. Understanding that you haven't had a chance to review that revised plan, I would expect this to be continued likely to the next meeting. We'd be hopeful that you could potentially issue an order of conditions at that meeting, not to further delay the project where it's been significantly scaled back. I turn it over to you.
Thank you, Greg. Amy?
Yeah, so that's good to see that the project was scaled back. Or it was just gonna need to go up on pile, so it's gonna be a little bit more work probably. Anyways, I'd like to see a detail of the sonnet tubes, Greg, on the plan. And what, I'm not sure about this impervious patio,
Yeah, that's what I was gonna ask about.
but other than that, I mean, I think that it can move with orders at the next meeting, I'm sure, subject to a revised plan. And confirming resource areas are barrier beach and coastal dune and land subject to coastal storm flowage.
Okay, thank you, Amy. Maybe Greg, can you enlighten us a little bit on we talked about not having the garage and the deck, but the limit of I guess the pervious walkway, we're calling it.
Sure. So with the removal of the garage addition on the front of the house, we've significantly changed the layout of that front walkway as well. The revised plans will show you that we're adding a walkway that's approximately 40 square feet. Extremely minor on a site like this.
Okay.
We are proposing, which Amy did denote there, a patio out back along the back of the seawall. It would be just a concrete patio surface. It's an area that's flat topography. It would be there as a sitting space.
Okay. Do we want to go through members with questions on this and then address it when it comes back, or do you want to just continue it?
That sounds like a good idea. Let's just continue it.
I agree.
Oh, can I just,
No,
I have one quick question that I'd like Greg to address when it comes back. Is that all right?
Yeah, I mean, maybe we can ask everybody for a quick
All right,
comment.
well, this is just, when you mentioned the patio out in front by the seawall, and you said concrete, and I don't know if that's gonna fly, what about putting a wooden patio down on the sand?
Sure. So it's not sand, it's lawn surface right now. Several of the other patios constructed along that portion of the seawall
I'm
have
sure
been
they are.
concrete. And
Yeah,
I looked at that, I looked at the seawall project that was proposed by the town along Oceanside Drive, and that included on the back side of the wall almost a 10-foot concrete apron. So I saw this as being the same. It basically prevents scour along the backside of that seawall. I'd like to
All
add
right.
to.
Except for the fact that that concrete apron wasn't approved. That's the one point.
Okay, I can relook at that.
We had some discussions about those splash pad Greg, and whether
Yeah.
we would condition them or not. And I think that they withdrew that part of that application because we were surprised to see it, to be honest with you. But
Gotcha.
he's not proposing a concrete patio. What he's showing here is a impervious patio with a detail for that construction.
Oh, I thought he said concrete.
No, it's
Okay. I'm hearing-
impervious patio area
We-
is
Yeah.
what it says.
We will
So, but, you know,
revisit.
let's go through the members because we've already started to talk about this and there might be in a butter and I see one of the owners wants to comment. So,
Okay.
So is that what you have, Penny?
Yeah, no, I was just, yeah.
Okay, Andy?
Just about, I think, Greg, were you about to say that it is concrete?
I was gonna say, I think that's our intention, is that's a concrete patio. The detail that you see, Frank, is for the
For the
pervious
walkway.
walkway, which again has been changed with the revised plan that was submitted this morning. So
My
that's
mistake, so
irrelevant
maybe,
at this point.
okay, that's my mistake, but maybe you can take comments into, go ahead, Andy, you can,
Yeah, that was, I think the concern about that patio has been raised, so that's what I had.
got it. Brendan?
Yeah, at the moment, I just have that concern about the patio, that's all.
Richard?
Same thing. Greg takes a look at it before the continued date. That'll be good.
Okay, Doug?
Nothing else to add.
All right. I think Mr. Coleman wanted to
Okay, I'm
comment,
gonna unmute Mr. Coleman.
and just for the, you want to give your name and address for the record?
Okay, I think I'm unmuted. Is that correct?
You are.
Okay, my name's Philip Coleman, and my wife and I, Charla, have resided here at 29 Surfside since August of 2020, and we're very fortunate and happy to be here. In addition to residing here, not to date myself, but I resided on Man Hill Beach as a summer resident for over 55 years. And that sort of puts a date on my age. But just the same, the first question I would have is, obviously there wasn't time to put the revised plan up on the screen. So you'll see that basically we did decide, due to the complexity of putting a garage on piles, to withdraw that request at this time. And as Greg mentioned, the front walkway basically adds a very small area of impervious walkway between the steps and the existing concrete path and driveway. The intent on the impervious pad out at the seawall was to basically match the four budding neighbors to the north. Pretty much have all the exact same size patios, and that's how that happened to get there. And yes, it was intended to be concrete. So we'll certainly get more information. You'll get more information through Greg coming up shortly. And if there's any other questions, we're happy to try to answer them. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Coleman. Amy, with these changes, do you think this is possible to slide this one in July, or?
Yeah, I mean, if he gets us the info ASAP, it's a possibility, yes.
Okay.
Which was just we've got the like main revised plan, but I think we talked about a few things that came up, Greg, so.
Yep, you want the, and I'd like to see a detail on the sonotubes and the deck, and I think they ought to rethink the concrete patio, but that's up to them.
Okay, so then let's continue it to July 17th.
Okay. I have a motion.
I make a motion, we continue 29 Surfside to July 17th.
Thank you. Second,
I'll second that.
from Doug, all in favor. Richard, It takes a long time for the answer to come from Humrock. How about Andy?
Yes.
Well, Andy's in Scituate.
I know, and then, so he can answer quickly. Go ahead, Andy.
Where is
Yes.
he?
Yeah. Brendan?
Yes.
All right. And Frank, yes. So we're gonna continue that one.
Yep.
Okay.
Okay,
Um,
on the Cairo Circle in the public meeting portion of this night.
let's see. On June 26th, the 6 p.m. meeting in Scituate Conservation Commission will act on the request of David Jaeger for determination of applicability of the Massachusetts Protection Wetlands Act and the Scituate Wetlands Bylaw for activities related to repairing a septic system in a single-family dwelling at location 8 Cairo Circle, Scituate. Abutters and other interest parties are invited to attend. Information to access the meeting is available on the agenda posted on the website.
Good evening again. For the record, this is Gregory Morse, registered engineer, Morse Engineering, representing the property owner, David Yeager. As was just stated, this is a request for a determination of applicability for a septic system upgrade project at 8 Cairo Circle. The property itself is 25,256 square feet, contains a bordering vegetated wetland, which is the line in blue at the top of the plan. Off of that in red is the 50-foot buffer, and in green, the 100-foot buffer. The site's developed with an existing 4-bedroom single-family home. It has a failed septic system in the backyard. The proposal here is to construct a new replacement septic system. It would be a septic tank and a pump chamber located in the backyard of the house in a new Presby EnviroSeptic leaching field on the left side of the house. All of the work is outside of the 50-foot buffer with the exception of the erosion control barrier, which is inside of the 50. The areas where the work are proposed is either lightly wooded where the leaching field is proposed, or in the case of the septic tanks, it's existing lawn surface. It would all be restored with loam and seed. Post-construction, it's not an increase in flow, all of the work being outside the 50 feet. It meets the requirements under the Title V presumption contained in the Act that all of the interests of the Act are protected with this project. I turn it over to you.
Okay. Brendan? Or Amy? Amy, why don't you tell us what you think?
Yes, so we love to see the septic upgrades. It appears to meet the requirements of a -3. Generally on these determinations, we do not accept the wetland line for future development of the property, but so if it came in as like a tear me down, we would probably reevaluate that. It does have Board of Health approval, I confirmed today, so I think you're pretty good on this.
Okay. Richard? Or Brendan, I was gonna ask Brendan his thoughts first, sorry. I
It looks
knew
good
he was
to me.
prepared to go.
I am
Good.
prepared. It looks good to me. I have no additional comments. or
Thank you.
questions.
Andy?
I'm good.
Penny?
Yes,
Yes, what?
yes, it's good.
Oh, okay.
I'm very happy.
Doug? That's all that matters.
Wait, are we
That's
voting?
right.
No question.
Richard?
Richard,
Richard
His,
gave a
his
thumbs up.
mic's, I guess he's got an issue with his mic, but we got a thumbs up, so.
okay,
All
Frank,
right, we'll take that as a vote. Anybody in the audience for this one?
no,
Okay, I'll
I'll
take a
make a
motion.
motion for a -3.
That's Penny. Do I have a second?
I'll
Is that a
second
sec-
that.
Was that a second from Richard with his thumb? Oh, we got a second from Brendan. All in favor? Richard?
Thumbs up.
Yep. Doug?
Yes.
Andy?
Yes.
And Frank, yes. Great.
Thank you.
Thanks, Craig.
I think we have missed it.
37 Rachel's Way. This is continued.
Yeah, so this is, I just will speak on this one. So this one was continued for a planting plan that we got this afternoon, also actually from Northern Oak. And it needs a little bit of tweaking, but they're close. They're not really on it with the plant types exactly. So I'm not really sure if you want to continue in this direction and just try to have me work with them on a planting plan, or if you want to try to have them reach out to a wetland scientist to help out with the plan.
Do you
I'm
feel,
happy
do you
as
do you
long
feel,
as
Amy, do you
Lance
feel comfortable that you can just work with them, or if they're not getting it, then bring in a wetlands person?
Yeah, no, I think I can. I mean, I didn't I just had a quick chance to take a quick look at it. And I did noted that, like, you know, the Latin names weren't the ones that we were really looking for. But and again, this was based off of another project that was nearby. So it's a little bit off the cuff, not usually the way we do it. And they were also proposing to bring in a foot or so of loam, which I'm not sure I was really crazy about that. But so I just want to make sure that that was necessary. I'm not sure whether it is, but yeah. I mean, I think we should just move this one though, so it's not on the agenda. Either that or put it in as a like a replication plan that you're accepting. So those are the two options, either a negative finding accepting this plan with some tweaks, or go harder, I guess, and get a more of an enforcement avenue.
Well, personally, I'd like to see you, I don't want to set a precedent there and allow creep from other properties. This is going to be a problem with several of the 40B projects that are really up to the wetlands, and then folks figure that out and then want to start to expand the yard. So I don't want this to be an expansion of the yard. Given that this was built, it's probably going to change some of the characteristics around that wetland. And if it can be enhanced, then I think that's a benefit for the wetlands, and then it could go forward. But I'd like to see that and be sure that it's not just allowing an expansion of folks' yards around those houses. So
Right. Well, and it looks like the homeowner is on the call, so maybe he can give us acknowledgement on which
okay,
feels comfortable with.
yeah, can we unmute Mr. Durkin?
Yeah. He's on.
I think you're on, Mr. Durkin, maybe.
He's on.
Good evening. Can you hear us?
Where'd he go? He's there.
You might have to turn your mic up.
Can you hear me now?
We got you.
Okay. Rich Durkin, 37 Rachel's Way. I spoke to Steve today, and he mentioned that he was with you, I guess, on Friday, Amy, to discuss what kind of plantings should go in. And he came up with this plan. So my assumption was that the plan that you and he went over was acceptable.
But well, it's largely acceptable. He just got the names wrong. So it needs to be tweaked.
Okay.
So that, like, the names of the plants actually matter. But anyways, it's not anything we can't work through.
Okay. And yes, we're not going to be increasing the yard at all. We've already decided that on the last meeting. And I would just love to move this forward and make it look good and take care of all the wetlands that are there. I mean, the cuttings that we did before this, they're already growing back. Nature's taking care of growing back anything that was removed. So it's eventually going to be just what it was before, but these plantings will make it even better. I'm confident of that.
Okay,
Great news.
all right. I guess you've heard our sentiment on this. We want to protect the wetlands that are there. And we think that if you can do a better job than just leaving them alone, as long as this isn't an expansion of the yard area, which you're telling us you're not
Right.
going to do. So
It's absolutely not. So Amy, should I have Steve speak with you to get those names right?
Yeah, I'll talk to him or email with him and we'll straighten it out. I'll mark up what I received sometime this week.
Okay.
all right.
Will we close on this tonight or no?
Yep.
Yeah.
Okay, great.
Can I make a motion for -3, Frank?
Sure.
I'll second it.
That's from Richard.
Yeah, I'm back.
All in favor, Doug,
Yes.
Andy,
Yes.
Brendan,
Yes.
and Frank, yes. Okay. So a
Thank you.
negative, Mr. Durkin, is good.
Okay, thank you very much.
Thank you.
And if I ever do this again, could you put me on the front of the list instead of the back of the list?
No, that's the penalty you get for doing it beforehand.
Okay. Have a good night.
If you apply in advance of doing the work, we'll put you up front. How's that?
Okay,
Thank you.
All right, so now we're on to the administrative items, and you can see we have a number of administrative items to get through too. So the first one, we'll just go with the first one. So notification of aquaculture. All of you received packets with a just notification from these oyster farmers. They're going to be farming in Cohasset Harbor, and looks like they are due to be licensed by the select board tomorrow night. But anyway, so most of the permitting, or I should say, just about all of the permitting that's not at a local level, it's all with the agencies at the state through the Aquaculture Commission. And while Conservation Commission is on that list, it's not required that it be in the form of an order of condition and notice of intent. So since this work is so far off of the land, felt that the notification was appropriate in this instance. So basically, this is just your opportunity to learn a little bit more about what's happening and ask questions.
Okay. So do they want to make their
Well, there's not really a presentation. I mean, unless you want there to be, like, we can put them on, but you got all the different descriptions of what's going on. So I'm thinking that some questions may have come up. You know what I mean? So maybe that would be the way to go.
How do any of you feel? Do you have anybody have a question?
Well,
or go ahead.
The only question I have has nothing to do with permitting. It's, how does this, are they going to do it similar to what they do in Duxbury or what they do in Wellfleet or anything like that, just for comparison? But that has nothing to do with the permitting, I don't think.
Yeah, they are.
Okay, there's the answer.
Actually, Jamie Davenport, he, I'm not sure if he's at the Duxbury farm or the Wellfleet farm, but he's one of our prime fellas on this oyster farm. So yes, Richard, it will be along those
I think it's pretty
exact
exciting,
same.
actually.
I think it is.
Yeah,
Hip hip hooray.
yeah. I got nothing else.
Okay.
Yeah, here I just had Jen put up the map of like where the plots are relative, so you can see how far out it is off of land. But still technically within Scituate.
I guess. So can I just ask a couple of questions? There's somebody here that can answer that. Are these any kind of structures, or is it just placing the shellfish in the mud? Lack of a better word.
I just unmuted Jamie if he's on.
Yeah, I'm here.
Okay.
Great.
So maybe
I can
Jamie,
give a
maybe you
little
could
bit of
just
background.
walk us through a little bit. Sure.
Yeah, can you just quickly do a little bit, Jamie?
Sure. So the method of my farm is actually in Dennis.
Dennis, I'm sorry.
Our method of that's okay. It began with a D, so you were close, right? Our method of farming will be a little bit different than I've been employing for the past 15 years in Dennis, because our space in Dennis is the intertidal space. So at low tide, at high tide, it's under about 8 feet of water, and at low tide, it's high and dry. They're sand flats for between 3 and 5 hours. Where we're going to be farming in Outer Cohasset Harbor at a dead low 0 tide, we'll be right at the water's edge, at the mean low tide point. At the far end of our acreage, which is roughly about 200 feet northwest, we'll probably be in about 4 to 5 feet of water. So on a minus tide, you can imagine that we'll only be in about 3 feet of water, like I say, a minus 2 foot tide. Unlike certain places like in Wellfleet and Duxbury, where they tend to broadcast oysters on the ocean floor, once they've reached a certain size, usually right around about the size of a $1/2, about 1.5 inches, they broadcast their oysters on the ocean floor. Ours will always purchase as seed oysters, baby oysters, anywhere from 1.4 millimeters to say 3/4 inch or an inch. And once they'll remain throughout their entire life cycle until they end up on a plate inside different forms of apparatus. So they'll start off in seed bags. I believe most of us intend to place those seed bags inside bottom cages. They're wire mesh, coated mesh steel cages, and inside those cages, seed bags of oysters will be placed. And as they grow larger, they'll be transferred into somewhat similar wire trays or cages, but also one might employ a rack and bag method, which is PVC racks that have been pounded down into the ground and only sit about 8 to 10 inches off the ocean floor. And then you cable tie bags on top. But it's going to be interesting. We're going to have to find out through trial and error what will work out there.
Thank you.
Yeah.
It's helpful.
Jamie, just as a concern, so there's been lots of discussion about this. These racks or bags or whatever, if how frequently does somebody have to look at them, work with them? What's the frequency of actually tending to these things? How does that work?
Well, in the beginning, for the first year, there won't be much activity out there. There won't. So I can give you kind of a rundown of my existing farm. Okay, so I'm actually expecting to take possession of seed oysters for my farm in Dennis on Wednesday. I'm going to drive down to New London, Connecticut, and pick up a bunch of boxes with bags of seed oysters, surrounded by insulation and cryo packs. Bring them back to my farm in Dennis. We'll parse them out so that each bag has roughly 2,000 oysters in a bag, and then we'll bring all those bags out on the farm and tie them down onto the racks with cable ties, and they'll be left there for about 3 months, probably until about mid-September, when we'll go out and we'll retrieve those bags a little bit at a time, and we'll divide them in half so that each bag now only has 1,000 oysters, and then they're moved up in successively larger aperture bags, so that you can increase water and food flow. And then those bags that now each have about 1,000 oysters in them will sit until it's time to pull them for the season. At least on our farm on the Cape, which is intertidal, we're exposed to the cold winter air, so we have to remove all of the contents of our farm every season, and they remain in insulated trailers from about right before Christmas until about the first or second week in March, weather permitting. Now, here in Scituate, I'm not exactly sure. We could conceivably leave oysters in for all season, but we're going to have to play it by ear and see how things are, because our farms obviously are, most of the farm is underwater at all times, so they wouldn't be exposed to the cold air. Next season, those same seed oysters will require more attention, more labor. Once, and this is all cyclical, right? So once we're about 2 or 3 years in, it's conceivable that each farm could have employees that might be working the farm, 5 days a week. So that gives you a little bit of an idea of what to expect there.
So are these like marked with buoys, or how do you know where?
They are. So Mike DeMeo, Sue Harrison, and I believe the members of the Scituate PD deployed 4 corner buoys about, 3 or 4 months ago. I think it might have been December. That mark off the entirety of the 3 acres that are part of this pilot program. You can see on that map that there are three green rectangles. So those buoys are on the northwest, southwest, northeast, and southeast corners of the acreage. Those same folks, Sue, Mike, myself, Larry Trowbridge, Mike Cotter, and a couple of helpers, and my partner, Greg Wallingford, actually went out yesterday and deployed 4 corner buoys for each farm. So we added 12 buoys to the existing 4, and those buoys mark off each individual acre. And these acres are separated by 50-foot lanes, which serve 2 purposes. One purpose is at least in an intertidal farm where they're high and dry, gives a little bit of space for if one farmer had oysters that had some kind of a disease, it's thought that perhaps that disease might not be transmitted if there's a buffer zone. But it's also for navigating around the farms. On my farm on the Cape, we can actually drive our vehicles out on the farms. There are 30 acres down there set up in a grid pattern. And so those 50-foot lanes allow us the ability to travel to and from the different farms using our vehicles. In this instance, it'll give us a place where we can kind of have our boats positioned with like with an anchor.
Okay.
So total it's 16 buoys, I believe, out there currently.
And how long does it take for these to come to a harvestable size?
So from the time the seed oyster is born, from its larval stage until the time when it ends up on a plate, is roughly, and this is, I'm going to speak to intertidal, where we are, it's typically about 24 months and as much as 36 months.
Okay.
It'll be interesting to see what we have in Scituate, but conceivably, since they're going to be in the water almost all the time, that means they're actively feeding about 8 to 10 hours a day longer than my farm on the Cape. So it's conceivable that that the oysters could go from larval stage to a plate in as little as 18 months.
Gotcha. And then just as a concern, so with the equipment that's out there, storms and that sort of thing, do you monitor those? How do you keep an eye
Absolutely.
on like your racks and things like that?
We do. For instance, if we had like a 2-day nor'easter that battered the coastline, we would be out there the next available tide when we could go out and see the damage and possibly retrieve gear. Because sometimes we do get errant gear. It doesn't tend to go too far, and we'll have to, in the beginning at least, definitely secure our gear using helical anchors and line to make sure things don't move too much. And if we find over time during this pilot program that there isn't a whole lot of movement, then maybe we can relax a little bit. But where my farm is on the Cape, which is on the bicep of Cape Cod Bay, on the Brewster Dennis line, we're almost completely open. We're a little bit protected to the northeast and the east and the south, but the north and northwest, there's no protection. And our farm has been there for almost 20 years. And apart from, the odd piece of gear that might end up several hundred feet away, it's pretty rare that we have anything devastating come through. Like I said, it's usually like a one-day storm isn't usually a problem. It's these like 2-day nor'easters, which sometimes can be a little bit challenging, but we've engineered a pretty foolproof method over the years to keeping things on our farm.
Okay. And is there any part of your license or whatever that stipulates that you're responsible for that equipment and stuff? I guess I just thinking about the environment around these, that it doesn't become littered with debris.
Absolutely. So, Sue Harrison, who spent 5 years as the chairperson of the Shellfish Committee, I served with her for the first year until it was my time to step down so that I could apply to the pilot program, could probably speak a little bit more specifically, but there are rules in our regulations. There are stipulations that I think it gives us 1 week, I believe, to retrieve any errant gear. That was one of the topics of contention over the past few years, where some folks felt like it was a little bit too long. But then again, you also have to give people a little bit of time in order to locate their gear. I won't lie, that is one of the major concerns that the surrounding abutters have to this project is errant gear. But I can only speak as a 15-year veteran of oyster farming, and that is that, we aquaculturists we're the stewards of the environment. We are the eyes and the ears. It's in our best interests to be the first person to solve a problem and to be aware of anything wrong. And especially in this situation where there's a lot of folks that are probably waiting for us to fail and do not want to see this succeed. And it's our job to prove them wrong.
Okay. Just as a curiosity points, I've read a little bit, but we got you on the line. So
absolutely.
Anybody from the commission have any questions? I'm sorry, I kind of monopolized that for a bit.
No.
Out of curiosity, Jamie, are your beds in Dennis the ones off of Crow Pasture?
They are, yep.
And do you access them through Crow Pasture?
We do, yeah. So we take a left off of Route 6A if you're heading into Brewster, right about 1.5 miles before the Cape Cod Museum of Natural History. And then you take a quick right about 100 feet down and you pass by a cemetery and then wind your way through an ancient way that will never be paved. And then you pop out of the forest inside the dunes. And then you come out of the beach. Yeah.
Got it. I've spent a fair amount of time at Crow Pasture in particular, and it gives me comfort because
it's a beautiful spot, isn't it?
It's a beautiful spot, and
yeah,
I think the oyster beds have done nothing but add to it. There's no negative that I've ever seen. So
yeah.
Well, that's good to know. Thank you. Anybody else?
Hope I can get these at Mulaney's.
Soon.
2 to 3 years, Doug. Maybe a year and a half.
Actually, I do intend to cheat, and that is have some oysters from the Cape tested for pathogens and then brought up, and then hopefully we might be able to have a Scituate oyster on a plate by the end of August, but it'll just be kind of like a sampling, basically.
Wow.
Good luck.
All good.
Okay.
Thank you.
Long time coming.
Anybody? Do we have any questions on this? Anybody else that happen to join in that had an interest?
Look like it.
Okay. So what action do we take on this one, Amy? Anything?
Well, I mean, not so sure you need to take action. I guess you could take a vote just to accept the notification of aquaculture that they've provided.
I make a motion, we accept the notification of aquaculture which has been provided.
It'd be a parrot.
Second.
I'm in a parrot.
That's a second from Richard. All in favor, Doug?
Well, I think this is going to sound really weird, but I'm going to recuse myself on this. only because of
You like
some of the
oysters?
I can't wait to eat. No, the plan that you're looking at was actually prepared by me. And
Oh,
and just with the history of the litigation on this case, I don't want to have any kind of even though we're not actually taking an official action or stand or anything like that on it, the appearance of a conflict is still there. So I'm just going to take the safe way out of that and recuse.
take the fifth.
All right.
Take the fifth.
Andy,
Yes.
Brendan,
Yes.
and Frank, yes. Thank you very much.
Okay.
Thanks, Jamie. Did a great job. All right.
Thank you, ladies and gentlemen. Appreciate
Thank you.
Have a good evening.
Okay, so next up is request to amend. We have two. Actually, I think that they're both Greg Morse Engineering. So I'll just unmute Greg, because what this is it's the before the public hearing. This is just, will you take it as a request to amend the orders?
Yeah.
Greg, are you on?
Yes, good evening.
Evening.
Hi.
I'm gonna apologize. I have to pull up 59 Glades Road. I'm all queued up on Border Street, however.
You can start with Border Street. How about that?
Sure.
Whatever you got.
Yeah, start with Border. Let's get that one.
Well, he's
done.
got Glades on there now. Or
Well,
Jen
Okay,
has.
there's Glades. We can run with either one.
Oh, just go. Just go.
We're
Whatever
flipping
you pull
all
up,
over
Amy.
here.
Whatever you got.
Yeah, yeah.
Wait.
Okay, we got Glades Road.
Okay, this is a request for an amendment. This is a notice of intent we filed a couple of years back for construction of a new single-family home at 59 Glades Road.
Oh.
The home is substantially complete. I believe it's occupied at this point. The order of conditions is still open. The original approval included construction of a swimming pool on the left side of the house. The location of that pool, the shape of that pool have changed, or we're proposing to change. There was also a retaining wall to be constructed. That retaining wall location has shifted where it got built, unfortunately, versus where it was proposed. So we're hoping that this is something the commission could consider as an amendment. The limit of work is no closer to the wetlands than what existed previously. The intent of the project, was to construct a home with a swimming pool adjacent to it. The intent of the project hasn't changed. While the retaining wall is about 3 feet closer to the BVW than what was approved originally, its existing lawn area, it was lawn area. It was a previously developed site. We could talk about mitigating that difference if we move forward as a modification. I turn it over to you.
Amy, thoughts?
Yeah, I think that I think you could probably take this as a request to amend. It's not.
Okay.
We have to vote on it, Amy.
Yes.
I'll make a motion.
Well,
to-
let's
Oh,
just go
all
through
right.
the members there, Ace. Richard?
I understand the parameters aren't changed terribly, but is there a difference in the size of the pool or the size of the area around the pool? Significant change.
Significant, no.
I'm good.
Okay. Andy?
Yeah, I was trying to find the previously approved one. It's moved into the 50 in a number of places where it wasn't before. Is that correct?
The retaining wall was moved closer into the 50, yes.
And is the deck off the back as well? That was just on the right side to begin with? Is that right?
The deck that's shown there is the as-built deck. I'd have to look at that to see where it was originally proposed. I thought it was laid out just like that, though.
Okay.
I don't have the original design in front of me at the moment.
Yeah, I looked at a plan, but it may not have been what we approved. Yeah, I mean, I guess procedurally, it's still okay to do it as a request, right? We can review it at that time, so I'm okay with that.
We'll get everything.
And it'll get, advertised and as a public hearing, and you'll
Yep.
be able to compare them and
Yep.
ask for
So
mitigation.
this is really just the applicant saying, can we even consider this? And then we'll need more
Correct.
information,
You got it.
including mitigation for what they're doing. So. Okay, Brendan?
Yeah, sure.
Okay.
Yes.
I think I touched on everybody, right?
Not me.
Oh,
You
Doug,
ignored me again.
sorry.
Yeah,
thought
no,
you were-
it's an amendment as opposed to filing a whole new notice, right? That's, yeah, so obviously, yeah, makes sense as an amendment.
Okay, it's not saying that you'll absolutely do it, but you're looking at
Right,
it and
right.
saying, this
Yeah,
is it, but
it qualifies as an amendment.
we'd obviously like the applicant to come back with some reasons why we should and possibly some more mitigation or whatever. Okay. And then how about, and Frank, yes, so we're good on that one. 53 border.
Yes.
Yeah. So the background on this one is that it's a superseding order. So there's superseding orders in a local order. And I mean, I think Greg can probably summarize it pretty quickly, but a few
Yep.
changes were made and it was reviewed by the state. And so now it's back to us, which the state said, okay, is the short version.
Where is it?
Sure. So 53 Border Street, this was originally a raise and rebuild of a single family home at that location. It was originally permitted by Stephen Bjorkland. The current property owner and the applicant for this amendment is John O'Donohue, who's in the process of constructing his personal single family home at that property. The project has substantially been built. The home is well under construction at this point. The driveway has been roughed in. The site grading has, significantly commenced. The existing home at the property has been demolished. During the construction of the home, there was a want to shift the location of the driveway as it comes down from Border Street to realign with the garage a little bit better. And in doing that, looking back at it, that triggered the requirement for a stormwater permit on this property. When this was originally approved, it was just under the thresholds for the land area disturbance. So we filed a stormwater permit. It falls into the category of an administrative approval as a low impact project. It met the criteria for that. It underwent a full peer review by Merrill Associates. Merrill's comments were satisfied. After we went through the stormwater piece of this, we filed then with the Department of Environmental Protection because the original order of conditions here had been appealed by a neighbor at that point. And so there was a superseding order of conditions issued for this project. We filed a request to amend that superseding order with the location of the new driveway, as well as several other minor items, which I outlined in a letter to the commission. For example, we moved the vent location on the septic tank leaching field. As part of the stormwater permit, we proposed some additional dry wells. The original proposal, I think, had 2. We increased the number of dry wells on the site. The original proposal lacked a walkway from the driveway to the front door. We added that walkway. There were a couple of minor things, again, that I outlined in my letter. We performed a site visit with Amy and Greg DeCesar from the DEP. The DEP issued a amended superseding order of conditions with that request. And so now we're here in front of you seeking the same amendment for the local bylaw portion of the project. Where DEP has already reviewed this project, conducted a site visit and approved it, I don't think there were any local bylaw wetlands or additional performance standards that would not be met with the revised project. It's the same intent. The home is in the same location. The limit of work is exactly the same. All mitigation that was approved as part of the original project remains in effect, is to be completed still. So turn it over to you.
Just with this as a superseding order, Amy, do we deal with this any differently?
Well, no, because there's a local order as well. So it's the same as, same requirement for a public hearing. Although, I mean, it's not to say that you haven't handled it differently before. Sometimes you handle it a little bit differently, but the way that I would say you should handle it would be to have a public hearing and then issue the amended orders, which the expiration date wouldn't change, but it would also incorporate the stormwater permit, which is something that needs to be recorded. So it would be give the owner one recordable document to include all of that in a nice package. So that's, and I do think that we want to have a butter notification on this because we know that there's an interest in the butter. That's
Sure. Okay. Richard?
I'm fine with going ahead with a request to amend,
Okay. Doug?
with approving it. Yeah.
Yeah, again, that makes most sense. So it kind of an administrative nightmare, it sounds like.
Yeah.
But
Yeah.
so we're just to help educate me here, we're actually well, we're approving the process of amendment, but ultimately we would approve an amendment that's already been approved by the DEP.
Yes.
So
Is that right?
but we'd also be approving the stormwater permit.
Which is
Would
which
be
is
rolled
local.
into the amendment, which is local.
Right.
that
And
would be
Greg, is that what you
part of
said
the
has
bill.
already been reviewed by Merrill?
Yes, it
Storm-
has.
The
Yeah.
stormwater. Okay, so that will be actually all set by the time
It's
the
all
amendment
set.
hearing happens, and it's a full public hearing amendment with butter input. And again, this is, I'm trying to learn as I go here. Can that be further appealed?
The answer is yes, it can be.
Okay. Well, all right. Yeah.
Okay.
Buckle up.
Yeah. Andy
I'm
or
good.
Penny? You okay with it?
I'm good, yep.
Andy, you're okay?
Yep.
Brendan,
Yes.
Penny? Do we lose Penny? Okay. All right. So what are we on to?
Enforcements.
Request for a certificate of compliance?
Yes, so the
29
request for certificates of compliance, I'm gonna hold on. Because I just haven't had a chance to look at them. One of them is that Coptic church. I wanted to make
Okay.
sure I looked at that.
All right.
And then, I mean, given that it's been a really long meeting, I'm not so sure that we have
Wait.
much updating on the enforcement. We do have orders to vote and then.
Yeah.
we're pretty
Why don't
done.
we do that on Scituate Trail?
Yeah, I was fine with them. I make a motion to accept those orders for 19 Scituate Trail.
So that's Richard. We have a second.
Second, Andy.
Me, Andy, all in favor? Doug?
Yep.
Did Penny come back? Is it something that Richard said?
I didn't say
Brendan-
anything. I put my finger up.
Brendan
Yeah, she's
Yes.
not on. Yeah.
and Frank, yes. Okay,
Past
Do
her
we
bedtime.
still have a quorum?
We do.
Yeah,
Yeah.
we do. Okay. All right.
okay, so is that it?
I make a motion to adjourn.
I like that.
I second that.
All in favor, Doug,
Yes, please.
Andy,
Yes.
and Frank? Yes, thanks for dealing with all this evening. Guys,
Thank you.
Thank you.
Have a nice
too.
All right,
night.
good night,
Thank you.
You too.
Good night.
Good night.